Live camera. Oh, look. I think I may have done it. Third week. Good morning. I'm very live, and I'm very early. Not very live. I'm either live or I'm Memorex. I'm holding up this book, Fame. I could hold up the other one, but I seem to be on a roll with this thing. I'm trying to figure out how to hold up a prop here. This is a prop. In a way that doesn't make people crazy, wondering if, we're on the Titanic. The reason, click, too low FPS, thank you. The reason I'm doing this is I want to talk about it later, and I thought it would be really cool if I rehearsed to get it correct, so it wasn't all shiny from the lamp. So I'm almost there. Is it better here? Ooh, we're different back here, aren't we? Okay, but then I feel like I'm falling. Never mind, Abby, never mind. Today's the 23rd of December, and it's going to be 10:15 in a couple of minutes, and I just realized for the first time that I tend to run long. I tend to talk too much, as you can probably tell. And I just realized this morning that if I start early, I'm convincing myself that I'm ending on time, but I packed in the extra minutes at the front end. And when people watch it not live, it's too long. Oh well. Today's the 23rd of December. And for many people around the world, there is this great hoopla, this great build-up, this great running madly down a hill and trying to keep up with the momentum so that you don't trip and fall and roll the rest of the way to the bottom and then off the cliff where the alligators are waiting for you. And, excuse me. And one of the things that happens when everybody is getting ready for something is that it creates a kind of I don't want to say a vortex, but it certainly creates something. And you feel obligated to be part of it. Or, if you're a rebel, you feel truculent and unwilling to be part of it. And so then you do that whole, folding the arms across the chest and saying unhelpful things. And as I have said many times, probably to the point of tedium for a lot of people, kids whose parents are mobile, military, in sales, running from the law, whatever it might be, we don't always get to celebrate holidays and situations the way people can and do if their life is essentially grounded in one place. If people like us always do things like this at 10:15, we tend to have a fluid attitude about these things because either if you don't adopt a fluid attitude, you end up feeling left out. You end up feeling lost and unhappy, which shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't be setting ourselves up for massive disappointment over and over and over again when we don't have to. And what my family did, there was only the three of us, but what we did anytime my dad had to go on a temporary duty trip, or all of a sudden all three of us were uprooted at the same time, is that we set ourselves the decision that Christmas was back ordered this year, or it came in early. There were a number of times in my life when we celebrated Christmas in November or very early December because my dad was going to be on the road flying someplace. And more often than the before and the actual date, we celebrated Christmas a lot of the time in January, around mid-January, because he would have been gone for those weeks and then flying home and then exhausted. And so we wouldn't put up the tree until he was back, because our tribe was incomplete without him. And really, when I gradually grew, I don't want to say grew up, let's say grew older, taller, wiser, no, what, taller, and left home, I think it was the first time in my life that I realized that people were anchored to these dates. Mother's Day is on Mother's Day, and Easter is on Easter, and Father's Day is Father's Day. Well, okay, why? Why can't they be the day that works for us? Maybe not them, but for us, because we are the family tribe. Why aren't we doing things like that? And I have a feeling that we just get into a habit. We get into the habit, we're walking, through a store trying to find the milk, and they've moved everything around, and we're distracted by the Christmas carols that begin usually shortly after Halloween. And we start getting pumped for that. And it just seems to me that people are forgetting the point. And I'm not talking about the goodness and the giving and the love and all that stuff. The point is that we are not living the way we used to when these traditions were created. One of the things we no longer do, many of us, is live in close proximity to our aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and whatnot. We have become nuclear families, and we are not always available to be there the way we used to be. And this causes us untold unhappiness when really we've invented all this technology to make alternative plans perfectly great, perfectly fine. I want to tell you two stories today. One is about my childhood, my very early childhood, and Christmas. My first play, actually. And the other one I want to talk about is the Christmas celebration that was created in a little sort of offshoot village south of Ottawa, Canada, which is my home. And I'm going to start with the story of my time as a child being famous, because I really want to wait and make sure that everybody is here and on board and has their coffee and they're facing front to talk about Christmas in Manotick. Okay. So when I was a kid, I was a very early reader, and which meant that I could learn lines without driving my parents crazy. So in kindergarten, they decided to do the nativity play, and I was given the role of the angel of the Lord, who comes down and tells everybody what's going to happen. Kind of like the host of the show. And in kindergarten, they had this very small auditorium, because kindergarten children are very small, and very low stage. And they put chairs in front of the stage for the parents, and they set those chairs back a bit, and in front of the stage were all the kids who didn't get picked. They sat cross-legged on the floor. And, you don't think about that at the time, because you're, I don't know, how old would you be, 5? But all those little kids who didn't get picked, you really didn't want them sitting there right in front, I wouldn't think. Maybe off to the sides where they could grumble and not necessarily wish that they were there, or wish you were dead, one of the two. Because there they all were glowering at you, and here you are all on this little platform staring out into the audience, except that these eyes directly in front of you. Anyway, so the play, I'm sure you've remembered it at some point in time. The angel of the Lord comes out, makes a big pronouncement, behold. So I was getting ready for my big moment, and I noticed something rather odd. One of the boys who had not been chosen, who was sitting in the back row of the kids who were sitting there all grumpy, he got up as I walked to the center of the stage to have my moment. And he got up and he walked around all the seated parents, and he went to the very back of the room. The back of the room, windows looking out onto the snow. In front of the windows, against the wall, all of the little actor children had been told to take off their shoes and put their shoes there. And we were all wearing ballet slippers, so we didn't go clomp, clomp, clomp when we walked on the stage. And so as I stood there saying, "Behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, for unto you is born this day," because I never forget my lines, I watched this little guy walk over to my shoes, and he bent down and picked them up, and then he turned around and he looked at me and he held up my shoes and went like this. And then he walked over to the nearest window that overlooked the snow, and he put the shoes on the window ledge, and he opened the window, and he looked over his shoulder. I'm still talking. "Unto you is born this day," except that my focus is a little off. It's more like, "Unto you is born this day." And when he had the window open, he picked up the shoes and he pointed to them and looked at me again. And then he flanged the shoes out the window, closed the window, and walked back to his spot on the floor in front of all the adults and sat down and watched the rest of the show, presumably. And I finished whatever the hell it was I was saying. I was mostly on automatic pilot at that point. And when I finished, I walked off and went over and stood in the corner where the angel of the Lord is supposed to stand, wondering how I was going to get my shoes. And in later years when I was doing stand-up comedy, I would say, the first time I met a critic in training, everybody's a critic, everybody has an opinion. And it was disconcerting and confusing and upsetting, because what did I ever do to you? I have no idea. I cannot for the life of me remember the boy's name. I don't even know if he was in my actual class. I don't remember anything else about it. I'm riveted to the moment where I was having what I thought was my "and unto you" moment, and all of a sudden it's not my moment. I'm being upstaged by my clothing and a dark energy from beyond. So that taught me something that I've never really put into words before. What it taught me was, it doesn't really matter how well you rehearsed and how ready you are. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. Because everybody else is working on their own time. I'm on Abby time. Everybody else, they got their own thing going. They're distance dancing to their own drum. And we forget that. We assume the benighted soul in the department store who says, "Oh, today we get to play Christmas carols," forgetting that possibly there will be people who would like to throttle them for doing so early, and forgetting for the moment that it may not be a good time, forgetting for the moment there are people who don't celebrate that holiday. And so what was the Christmas music better than elevator music? I don't know. It was it was more focused, certainly. And so we all go along side by each, but in our own narrow little paths, until something comes along that gives us a little tap on the side of the head and makes us realize that we may only be walking like this, but there's somebody right there and right there. And they may not be walking the way we are, they may be coming the other way, but we're all in motion and we're all in movement toward and from something. And just because we happen to have our eyes on one prize doesn't mean anybody else does. And this is a great segue to go into the lovely story about the Manotick Christmas. A long time ago, years and years now, a lovely woman who lived in the village of Manotick reached out to me and she said, "I want to talk to you about something." She didn't have kids. She said, "I was in the shopping mall the other day, and the whole point of this Christmas thing is crazy, because the kids aren't enjoying waiting. The parents aren't enjoying waiting. The mall is delighted that you're there, except that while you're standing and waiting to meet Santa, you're not shopping. So the intention is good, but the the implementation and the outcome are not good. By the time the kid has seen Santa, the kid doesn't want to stand around while you walk through the furniture store or the lingerie department. They want to go home. And so it didn't work. And she said, Menotick is the perfect size. I want to use you and this other lovely man who had this deep, deep, deep British voice. And so when he said, ho, 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 he sounded like central casting for Santa. And very tall. He had his own beard, but we buffed that up. And they got me this wonderful costume. And I posted it, actually, last night. That was the outfit that was made for me. It was beautiful, vintage-looking, wonderful creation. And the goal was that we wouldn't sit in a place and have people come to us and bring their children. We would walk through the village. We would walk in and out of the stores. We would walk down the outside of the shopping mall. We would be actively participating in village life before Christmas. Because, of course, Christmas lives in Manotick. And so people would see us. The day we would do it was always the first Sunday in December, which gives people lots of time to get used to the idea that this is coming. And so they would see us wandering around, and we became temporary citizens of the village. Oh, they're back. How are you, Father Christmas? Hi, Merry Christmas. How are you? Look, it's Santa. Hi, Mrs. Claus. And it became normal. People like us who live in Manotick, they used to say, are close personal friends with Santa and Mrs. They're always here on that first Sunday, just checking up on everybody. And then they have to go back to the North Pole, and they have to make sure that the reindeer's hooves are all shod and everything is ready and, change the oil on the sled and whatnot. And we would have these normal conversations. We would go to a wonderful little restaurant that was run by seniors for seniors. And they would have a Christmas breakfast with Santa and Mary. I called myself Merry Christmas because every time somebody said Merry Christmas, I would say, yes. It never gets old. And they were thrilled that we would show up. We would come down the stairs from the back office and wander around and ask everybody if they'd been good and what were they having for breakfast. And, oh my goodness, I love your dress and I love your hat and are those new earrings? And just chit-chat. I used to say, have you been good? And then I would say, before you answer, I would like to remind you of two things. One, I already know the answer, and the second is it's Sunday. Just saying. And so it became humanized and humorous, and we had a lot of fun doing that. There was one lovely, elegant woman who wore a red dress one day, and I said, oh, you're wearing my favorite color. And she said, oh, I hoped you would think so. And every year after that, she wore that dress. And her husband was this elegant, gallant gentleman, and every time I came to the table, he stood up, and he took my hand, even though I had a little white glove on it. He took my hand and kissed it, and would say, Merry Christmas, you are as lovely as ever. And how awesome is that? That we created that opportunity, that they got to look forward to that. It became their pre-Christmas, pre-whatever day tradition on that Sunday. I had one little lady saying, oh, I can't eat candy anymore. And I said, well, I can't eat it either. It rots your teeth. That's why we usually hand it out in plastic. You can just put it someplace. It's just the idea. It's the symbol of the days when you used to eat candy. And now, why would we? And she said, oh, I never thought of it that way. And I said, well, you're very welcome. And there were people who had lost weight or gained weight. And there was a couple who came one year and they said, we want you to meet our new neighbors. They just arrived in town. We've been telling them about this ever since they bought the house. They couldn't wait to meet you. And this little restaurant was divided into 2 rooms. And so what we would do halfway through our round, because we would go around and see everybody, and then we would go away and disappear so they could eat. And we wait for the next sitting, and there were usually 2 or 3 sittings. So after we'd done our hellos and how are yous, I would say, or Father Christmas would say, has anyone heard of American Idol? This is how long ago it was. And they'd all say, well, this is Christmas Idol. And here's how it works. We have a challenge. We need to see which room can sing Jingle Bells the loudest. Father Christmas had this bell, right? And so we would get them all to sing. And then we would go into the next room and we would say, you heard what happened in the other room. Are you ready? And they would all go, yeah. And we would get the serving staff, and we would get everybody singing. The kids, little ones, it didn't matter. And then they would all cheer, and we would all applaud, and I would say, okay, Merry Christmas has spoken. I've tallied the votes. It's a tie. And they would all laugh. They always knew it was going to be a tie. And we would walk through the big grocery store and ask people if they were all ready for Christmas. And one little girl one year said, oh, I'm ready for Christmas all day, every day. I don't need presents. I just like it when everybody gets together and is happy. She was like 10, and I looked at her parents, who were going, it wasn't them. It wasn't them who did it. It was her. See, it makes me cry. I did that job. I did that wonderful event for 25 years. And then one day it rained. And I have to tell you, after we did the breakfast, we would get on horse-drawn wagons and ride around the village for a couple of hours. So the only thing worse than riding around the village for a couple of hours on an open wagon drawn by horses in the freezing rain is when it's plus 11 degrees and it's raining. Because I have to tell you, nothing says Christmas like a wet horse, and especially when you're standing behind it for 2 hours. So we went around and around every year. And we sang, and we laughed, and we met people. The first weekend in December. We didn't do it on the 23rd, or the 24th, or the 26th. We did it to welcome in the month of, the holiday, whatever it might be. So, I've run long, but you know Christmas tends to make me do that. It's Christmas in 2 days. And I am so excited that you guys are watching, that you have become part of this, that you're going to help me with Fame and Vicarious, and you're going to help me with Story Me TV next year, that we're going to create the most beautiful present anybody could ever wish for. And the present is, I'm sorry. The present is that we can be together anywhere, anytime, no matter what. We don't need to be physically close. We just need to want to connect. And when we want to connect, nothing can stop us. Happy holidays, everybody. Hug your loved ones. See you next week.